The wind was crisp the morning I got the call. I remember it clearly because I had just stepped out of a diner near my office when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. "Mr. Dawson," a voice said, official and cautious. "Yes," I replied, already uneasy. "This is Claire Jenkins from the county recorder's office. I just wanted to confirm some information regarding a recent property transaction, your lake cabin lot." My heart skipped. "What transaction?" I asked. She paused. "According to a submission we received last week, the HOA board from Pine Lake Estates has transferred ownership of your parcel, Lot 14B, to a Ms. Karen Ashford." It felt like someone hit me in the gut. "That's not possible. That property's mine. I've owned it for years. There was no transaction, no agreement, nothing. Who signed this?" I was already rushing to my truck, fumbling for my laptop bag. According to the submitted form, it was signed by the HOA president, vice president, and their legal representative. There's a notice of abandonment form dated 3 months ago as well. I slammed the truck door shut, engine roaring to life. That land's not abandoned. I was there just this spring. The cabin's fully maintained. There's a generator, food supplies, even a fresh security system installed. Someone messed up, bad. Claire lowered her voice. "Between you and me, sir, the documents don't look right. Some inconsistencies in the signatures and the notary stamp was expired. I thought you should know." I thanked her, heart racing, and ended the call. My mind was on fire. I hadn't always had issues with the HOA. When my father passed the cabin down to me, it was meant to be a place of peace. Pine Lake used to be a quiet community, one road in, one road out, nestled between the forest and the lake. Families vacationed here. Kids learned to fish. Life was simple. But that all changed when the HOA got taken over by people like Karen Ashford. She moved in 5 years ago and immediately tried to modernize the neighborhood. She campaigned for stricter appearance rules, banned fishing after 6 p.m. to preserve the ecosystem, and once tried to fine me for parking my boat trailer on my own driveway for more than 24 hours. It was all about control. She saw herself as some queen of the lake, enforcing rules that no one voted for. I pushed back, of course. I attended meetings, called her out on power abuse, and refused to play her games. And that's probably why I became a target. Still, I never expected them to pull something this bold, claiming my property was abandoned and selling it to Karen herself. That wasn't just petty. That was fraud. And what she didn't know was that I still held the ace. See, decades ago, when my grandfather first bought the cabin lot, there was no formal HOA. In fact, Pine Lake didn't even have a proper bridge connecting it to the highway. Just a dirt path and a broken wooden crossing. So he built it himself. Poured concrete. Laid gravel. Even added decorative railings. And when the community was formed around it, everyone just used it, no questions asked. When I inherited everything, I formalized it. Registered the bridge land under a private LLC. Paid taxes on it. Even maintained it with my own crew. The HOA didn't own that bridge. I did. And now, they were going to feel the weight of that fact. I spent that whole night pulling records, email threads, cabin maintenance logs, property tax receipts. Everything that proved I'd never abandoned anything. By morning, I had a folder 2 inches thick and a fire in my chest. I loaded up the truck and made the 3-hour drive to Pine Lake. I passed the familiar old gas station, the bait shop my dad loved, and finally turned onto the winding road that led to the lake. Everything looked the same. Until I reached the entrance to my property. My gate, the one I personally had installed with coded entry and security cams, had been cut open. A new chain had been wrapped around it with a plastic sign dangling. Property of Karen Ashford, trespassers will be prosecuted. My stomach twisted. I pulled over, heart pounding. There was my land. My grandfather's cabin in the distance. My picnic bench, my dock. And someone had the audacity to slap their name on it like they owned it? I didn't even try to cut the chain. I took pictures, lots of them. Then I made a beeline to the county offices. Karen had filed a fraudulent transaction and had physically taken control of my land. It wasn't a dispute, it was a crime. But I wasn't just going to rely on the courts. I had another card to play. By the time I returned to the area, the sun was setting. The quiet of the lake community blanketed the hills, and I parked near the entrance to the bridge. I pulled out my laptop, logged into the control panel of my bridge security system, and flipped the switch. Mechanical locks snapped into place on both ends. Remote access to open the bridge, disabled. Motion alerts, on. And then, just for good measure, I put up 2 large signs: Private Access Bridge, NO Vehicle Entry without owner permission. The HOA might have thought they were clever. They might have thought I'd stay quiet. But they just tried to rob the wrong man. The community didn't know it yet, but Karen had just started a war, and I held the only road in. The next morning, I was already at the lake by 7:30. A heavy fog clung to the water like a secret waiting to be revealed. I parked near the bridge entrance and watched as a few cars idled across the water, unsure why the gates wouldn't open. I knew why. The locks I'd activated the night before were working exactly as planned. No one was coming in. And more importantly, no one was getting out. I sipped my coffee and waited. It didn't take long. At 8:15 sharp, a familiar black Lexus SUV pulled up and parked near the blocked bridge. And out stepped Karen Ashford, pristine as always, sunglasses on despite the cloud cover, her expensive jacket draped across her shoulders like she was royalty. She didn't even look at the signs. She walked right up to the gate and pulled on it. Nothing. Tried again. Nothing. She looked around and noticed me sitting calmly in my truck. The moment our eyes met, her expression soured. She stormed over. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped. I stepped out slowly, calm and collected. "Just checking on my bridge," I said. "Routine maintenance." "You can't just shut off access," she barked. "People live here. You're blocking residents, services, everything." "Funny," I said. "You didn't seem too concerned about my access when you put a chain on my property gate and claimed it was yours." She blinked, caught off guard. "You abandoned that lot. It was lawfully transferred. The board voted." "Karen, your little scam didn't work," I replied, holding up a thick envelope. "The county clerk confirmed the transaction was invalid. You submitted expired notary stamps, signatures from non-board members, and no proof of contact or notice. That sale is null. And you? You're trespassing." "No," she said sharply. "You're trying to bully your way back in after we cleaned up your mess. You left that place to rot." "I installed a $3,000 security system in April," I shot back. "I paid property taxes in June. That's not abandonment. That's ownership." She glared. "This is harassment. I'm calling the police." "Be my guest," I said, opening the truck door. "Just make sure they know whose land they're standing on when they drive across this bridge. Because this?" I pointed to the concrete under her designer shoes. "This is mine too." She stared at me, unsure if I was bluffing. But she made the call anyway. 911, what's your emergency?" I heard her tell the dispatcher that a man was blocking emergency access to the community, holding people hostage, and committing criminal trespass. She threw in that she was the HOA president and that I was a dangerous individual with a history of threats. I almost laughed. 10 minutes later, I saw flashing red and blue in the distance. A patrol car rolled up slowly, cautious. Karen immediately started waving her arms. "There he is," she shouted. "That's him. Arrest him right now." The deputy stepped out. Name tag, Morales. Calm demeanor. The type who wasn't easily fooled. "Good morning," he said. "Can someone tell me what's going on here?" Karen practically leapt toward him. "He locked the bridge. No one can get in or out. He's threatening me, Ma'am, slow down," Morales said, raising a hand. "Sir, your name?" "Travis Dawson," I said, handing over my ID. "I'm the legal owner of this land, this bridge, and Lot 14B. I have documents proving all of it." Morales took the folder I handed him. He flipped through the certified deeds, the LLC registration for the bridge, the maintenance records, even an old photo of my grandfather standing proudly on the same bridge with a plaque that read, "Dawson Crossing, 1981. Morales looked up. "This looks legit." "It is," I said. "She tried to claim my cabin lot was abandoned and sold it to herself through the HOA. But the county clerk confirmed the sale is void. And this bridge? Never belonged to the HOA. It's private property." "That's ridiculous," Karen shouted. "We've been using this bridge for years." "And I've let you," I replied. "As a courtesy. But you just broke into my land and tried to erase me. That courtesy is over." Morales sighed. "Ma'am, did you file a deed transfer?" "Yes," she said proudly. "It was approved at the board meeting." "We have full minutes, ma'am," Morales interrupted. "You don't have the authority to override private property rights with a meeting." "And this deed?" He held up one of the pages. "It's unsigned by the rightful owner. That makes it fraudulent." But, he's holding the entire neighborhood hostage." "No," Morales said calmly. "He's enforcing his rights. And unless you have a valid court order, there's nothing illegal about what he's done." Karen turned red. She was breathing heavily now, realization sinking in. Her scam had failed, and the law wasn't going to save her this time. Morales turned back to me. "Mr. Dawson, is there a way to open the bridge for essential services?" "Yes," I said. "I have a schedule system. Emergency services and deliveries will still be allowed through, but the general community? Locked out until this is resolved." "Sounds fair," Morales said. He extended a hand. "Appreciate your cooperation." As I shook his hand, Karen exploded. "You're taking his side? He's ruining everything." Morales looked at her, now fully exasperated. "Ma'am, unless you want to talk to someone about fraud charges, I suggest you back away from this situation immediately." And just like that, her empire of control started to crack. I watched her stomp back to her SUV, flustered and furious, while the deputy got back in his car and drove away. As the bridge gate locked shut behind me, I looked out across the lake and smiled. The board thought they could erase me. Karen thought she could steal from me. But they forgot something important. I wasn't just some random homeowner. I was the one who built the road they all needed. And now, they were stuck on the wrong side of it. It took less than 24 hours for chaos to hit the community. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up with calls from neighbors I hadn't heard from in years. Not threats, confessions. Complaints. People begging to know what was going on. Apparently, the bridge shutdown had brought everything to a standstill. Trash pickups were cancelled. Amazon deliveries couldn't make it through. A couple families who worked night shifts were stuck outside the neighborhood overnight, forced to rent a motel because they couldn't get back in. And the best part? The HOA hadn't told anyone a thing. They didn't want to admit what happened. Karen, of course, had spun her own story, telling folks that I was a rogue landowner who had gone crazy and illegally blocked community infrastructure. But as residents started doing their own digging, the truth started leaking out. A few of them contacted the county office and confirmed it themselves: the sale of my property was invalid. The bridge was legally mine. And Karen had lied. Again. That evening, I parked just outside the bridge, leaned back in my truck seat with a thermos of coffee, and watched as more residents gathered on the other side. Some looked curious. Others looked angry. A few just looked plain exhausted. One older man walked up to the gate and shouted across. "Are you Travis Dawson?" "I am," I said, stepping out. "Name's Mike Turner. Been living here 12 years. I just want to know, what the hell's going on?" I walked to the edge of the bridge and explained everything, loud and clear. I told them how Karen had forged a property sale using false signatures. How she declared my lot abandoned without ever sending me notice. How she chained up my gate and labeled it as her own, while quietly transferring the deed to herself. And then, I told them how I had been letting the entire community use my private bridge for free, for years, until that trust was violated. You could feel the mood shift. Whispers. Mutters. A couple people cursed Karen's name under their breath. And then Mike said, "That woman's been running this place like a prison for years." A few others nodded. One woman in a jogging suit stepped forward. "She tried to fine me $150 last month because my daughter drew chalk art on our driveway." Another man added, "She told my wife our front porch chairs were unapproved furniture and threatened a lien if we didn't remove them." And just like that, it all started to unravel. These people had been quietly suffering under Karen's self-declared reign for years, but no one had ever pushed back. Until now. By the next morning, things reached a boiling point. Someone created a group chat titled Free Pine Lake and invited every resident except the HOA board. Screenshots were flying around. Copies of Karen's threatening emails. Photos of her sneaking around people's properties, inspecting things without permission. Even an old video where she screamed at a delivery guy for taking the wrong turn at a cul-de-sac. I stayed quiet. Let them talk. Let them see the truth with their own eyes. Then, around noon, my phone rang again. It was Rick, one of the former board members who had stepped down months ago. "Travis," he said, "you won't believe this. They're calling a special emergency meeting. It's happening tonight. And the residents are demanding Karen be removed." I didn't say much. Just thanked him and hung up. Later that evening, I got a link to a private live stream. The community center was packed wall to wall. Not just board members, but nearly every family in Pine Lake. Karen stood at the front, flanked by two remaining board members who looked like they regretted every decision that led them to that moment. One resident took the mic and didn't hold back. "Karen Ashford has lied to this community. She stole a property. She forged signatures. And now, she's caused a shutdown that's affecting every single one of us. She's cost us our deliveries, our jobs, and our peace of mind." Applause broke out. Another resident followed. "She fined my 9-year-old daughter for leaving a bicycle on the sidewalk. Is that the kind of neighborhood we want to live in?" More cheers. More hands raised. And finally, someone read a motion, effective immediately. "We motion to remove Karen Ashford as HOA president, and freeze all HOA actions pending a full investigation into misuse of power." Karen's face went pale. She tried to defend herself, claiming she did it for the good of the community, that I was manipulating everyone, that she was being harassed by extremists. But no one was buying it anymore. The vote was held right there. 82 residents in favor. 3 against. Karen was done. A few neighbors sent me photos afterward, Karen storming out of the meeting red-faced, shouting that she would sue everyone and have the last word. But the only thing she left with was her pride. And maybe a taste of her own medicine. The following morning, I received a formal letter from the interim HOA board. They apologized on behalf of the community. They acknowledged that the land sale was fraudulent. And they requested, very politely, that I reopen the bridge to restore normal traffic. I thought about it long and hard. Finally, I replied with my terms. First, the HOA must formally recognize that my lot is outside their jurisdiction, no dues, no restrictions, no fines. Second, the HOA must pay for the legal fees I incurred fighting the false sale. Third, they must agree never to challenge my bridge ownership again. They agreed. All three. That afternoon, I unlocked the gate. The bridge reopened. And Pine Lake could finally breathe again. But not under Karen's rule. Not under fear. Not anymore. As I drove across the bridge to my cabin for the first peaceful time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long while. Not just justice, but freedom. They thought I'd walk away. They thought they could erase my name from my family's land. They forgot that when you cross a line, you'd better be sure you're not standing on a bridge someone else owns. Because if you are, it only takes one key to lock you out. I stood on my porch that evening, watching the sun dip behind the pine trees, golden light reflecting off the calm lake surface. My grandfather's flag was flying again. The wind caught it just right. For the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly the way it should. The fake "No trespassing" sign that Karen had hung on my gate had been removed. In its place, the old wooden family nameplate was back, freshly cleaned and varnished, Dawson Cabin, since 1981. It wasn't just a piece of land. It was a legacy. A piece of my father, my grandfather, my childhood. And Karen had tried to take that from me like it was some parking spot she was entitled to. But now she was gone. Stripped of her title. Shunned by the same community she used to rule like a tyrant. According to one of the neighbors, she had quietly packed up and left within 2 days of her removal. No goodbye. No apology. Just vanished. Apparently, the shame was too loud, and the silence afterward even louder. But the story didn't end with her walking away. In the days that followed, a slow but beautiful transformation started to ripple through the Pine Lake community. For the first time in years, people started talking to each other again. Not through HOA memos, but face to face. I was invited to a neighborhood bonfire. Me, the guy who had locked them all out for 48 hours. And you know what? No one was mad about the bridge. In fact, they thanked me. One older woman, Judith, came up to me with tears in her eyes. I thought I was the only one who felt bullied, she said. Karen told me I couldn't grow tomatoes in my garden because it made the neighborhood look poor. I gave up the thing I loved for years. But what you did, you gave all of us our voices back. I was stunned. One man told me he'd paid over $800 in random HOA fines over 2 years, most of them untraceable to any written rule. Another said Karen refused to approve a ramp for his disabled son's front steps because it violated symmetry requirements. People had been trapped under the weight of someone else's control. I just happened to be the first one to say no loud enough to shake the walls. After a few days, the new HOA leadership offered me something unexpected. Would you consider becoming a community advisor? They asked. You're fair, you're level-headed, and let's face it, you own the bridge. I laughed out loud, almost spilling my coffee. I appreciate it, I said. But I think I've had enough drama for one lifetime. I just want to enjoy my cabin and the lake in peace. And I meant it. I didn't need a title. I didn't need control. I just wanted what was already mine, my land, my freedom, and my peace of mind. I did, however, offer them a compromise. I'd reopen the bridge permanently, but install smart locks that I controlled. In return, the HOA would pay a small access fee for maintenance and repairs, to keep the structure safe for community use. They agreed instantly. For the first time in its history, Pine Lake was paying me. Funny how life works sometimes. Not long after that, I got a visit from the same deputy who had responded to Karen's 911 call. Deputy Morales. He brought a clipboard, and after a firm handshake, said, "Mind if I ask you a few questions? We've opened a formal inquiry into fraudulent filings by your former HOA president." "About time," I said. I gave him every document I had, every email, every photograph of the forged signatures and altered gate. Morales smiled. "You're one of the few people I've met who had every receipt in order before the fire even started. Let's just say I've dealt with HOA nonsense before," I said. "You learn to keep the receipts when you live near people like Karen." He nodded. "With any luck, she'll see the inside of a courtroom before the year's over." But you know what? I didn't even care if she ended up behind bars. For me, justice had already been served. Watching her get humiliated publicly, stripped of power, and pushed out by the very people she once ruled, that was more satisfying than any trial. And the real justice? That came every morning I woke up in my cabin, stepped out onto the dock, and knew that no one could take this away from me again. No board. No HOA. No entitled Karen. It was quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear, but the kind that comes from peace. The birds chirped freely. The lake was still. My bridge was still standing, stronger than ever. Every board, every bolt, was a reminder that when you build something right, and protect it fiercely, it can outlast even the worst storms. So many people told me later, I wish I had spoken up sooner. I told them, it's never too late to stand up for what's yours. The truth is, there will always be people like Karen. People who think rules apply to everyone but them. People who crave control so badly, they'll break the law to get it. But as long as there are people like you and me, who aren't afraid to stand up, to push back, to lock the gate when needed, they can't win. They might climb high, but they forget who owns the ground they're standing on. So if you've ever been bullied by someone with a fake badge, an inflated title, or a smug sense of power, remember this story. They tried to sell my family's land behind my back. They called the cops when I fought back. But in the end, I wasn't the one who got locked out. They were. And the bridge? It's still mine.